Hello, the purpose of this video is a large-scale overview of all the changes to the Elite 8 gradebook for the 2024-25 school year. Some of the major changes that we'll see are some of the options that we used to have access to are now going to be chosen and locked down at the district level. One of those is going to be the categories. So let's take a look at how we have that set up. We will now have three categories to choose from. Summative, that'll be calculated at 90%. Formative will be calculated at 10%, and feedback that'll be calculated at 0%. And we'll talk a lot about those here in a few moments. Another large scale change is that all courses will be using a 4-point overall scale to calculate the A, B, C, F grade. There'll be no longer pluses or minuses. And then at the end of the progress period, a student who is not making the minimum requirements will receive an NC. And then at the end of the trimester or semester, the final grading period, the transcript will show an F for a student who's not making the minimum requirements in a course. All classes, again, will be using this overall point scale to calculate the overall letter grade. Other changes that we're going to see in the gradebook are how we actually enter in assessments for grading. So there are a couple different ways to enter in a summative assessment. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. For this example, I'm going to use a common summative assessment that has 3 standards on it. So what we're going to do is the first way to do it, which is the recommended way, is actually going to create a separate assignment for each standard that we have attached. So I'm going to start in the bottom right-hand corner with a new little plus button. That's going to open up a big, large blue circle, and I'm going to click on Assignment. This is going to bring me to my assignment description page with a lot of the same options that we were used to seeing in the past. I'm going to start by giving this a title. I'm going to call this CSA 2 Argumentative Essay. And then some of the other options we have to make sure we do is the due date and the assignment date. It's going to automatically populate with the date that you create the assignment, but you can click on the little calendar here and change the due date or the assignment date if you wish. Under unit, we now have the ability to add units to this. So I can type a new unit. Let's call this Unit 2 Argumentation. And then I can go ahead and choose my category. For this, it's going to be summative. Score type, we're always choosing secondary standard score. And then points, we're going to go ahead and make this worth 4 points. Our new description box is now a large student content box where we can add all of our instructions. Maybe we have a rubric or we have images from the textbook. Whatever you wanted to put here, we can now put here. We have a lot more options than we have had in the past. And all of this will show up in parent view and student view to give parents and students a better idea of what's happening for this assessment. Next thing, I can click over to Advanced Settings. This is where we're going to find our options for how it's viewed in student view and parent view, very similar to what we had before, and a new fun button that says Add to All Courses. So if you teach the same course multiple times, you can create it one time and add this assessment to multiple courses. One of the big changes, again, is that we will be attaching standards to all of our summative and formative assessments this year. I'm going to go ahead and click over on the Standards tab. I'm going to hit Choose Standards, and this will where I can see the priority standards that are attached to my course. You will only see the priority standards that are attached to the course that were chosen by the teaching and learning folks. And again, tied directly to the course. So one of the standards that I'm going to be assessing in this example is my command of conventions, which is Literacy L 1112.1. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to highlight that. And now I can see that that's attached to my assessment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the title, and I'm actually going to include the standard number in my title so that I know which standard I'm assessing in this assignment. Once I'm done, I have a button up here at the very top. It's kind of hard to see that says 8 unsaved changes. When I click on that, it's going to save that, and then I can close out of that, and now you'll notice that that assessment is in my gradebook. I can click on the little column here, and make that wider so I can see the standard name. Now again, I have 3 standards for this assignment, so I'm actually going to repeat this 2 more times, and I'm going to keep my same naming convention, CSA 2, argumentative essay. I'm going to go through the same thing. Now you'll notice that my unit is there already. Summative, score type, again, always choosing standard score. We're going to put a 4 there for that one. I didn't change any advanced settings, so I don't need to go there again. I'm going to go to standards, and now I'm going to choose my second standard. So for this, we're just going to go ahead and choose analyze and evaluate the structure of an author, which is RI 0.5. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Back to my content. Make sure I include that standard in the title name. Again, hitting the save button, that's a little tough to see, and closing it out there. So now I have the same assessment listed twice in my gradebook, once for each standard. Because this assessment has 3 standards, I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to end up with 3 total assignments for what would essentially be one assessment. So again, repeating myself a little bit here, I'm going to jump over to the standards, choose my third standard. We're just going to pretend like this is right arguments, so W.1. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Make sure that I put that in the title of, whoops, my assessment. We're going to go ahead and choose our information here. Still summative, again, always choosing secondary standard score, changing that to 4 points. I'm going to hit the save button top right and close it. Now you'll notice that I have that assessment in there 3 times, and I can go ahead and make this a little larger if I want to see what each one of those assessments are. So that's the first way to create a summative assessment with 3 standards attached. I'm going to go ahead and now show you another way that we could essentially create the same assessment, but this time we're going to attach all 3 standards to one singular assessment. So this time I'm going to start pretty much the exact same way. I'm going to name my assessment. So again, this was CSA2, argumentative essay. And now we're still going to do the same thing on the front page here. It's still the same unit. Summative, we're all again still always choosing secondary standard score. Still going to make this worth 4 points. But now, instead of adding one standard, I'm going to go ahead and add all 3 standards on the same assignment level. So there's all 3 of them there. If I close this box, now I can see all 3 standards attached to the singular assignment. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to close that. And now we can see it right here. This is the one that has all 3 standards attached. Now, some of the pluses and minuses, right, pros and cons to doing it these 2 ways, is a lot of the feedback we got from our pilot teachers last year was that if we did it the way that has all 3 standards attached to one assignment, this assignment here would be worth essentially the exact same amount as, let's say, a random summative exit ticket that we did on a Friday afternoon. And we wanted to be able to make assessments that had multiple standards worth more than assessments that maybe only assessed one standard. So doing it this way, the first way where we have 3 assignments for a singular assessment, each one with a separate standard attached, I can go ahead and assess each one of those standards individually. And what I'm doing here is I'm setting scores in for each one of the standards. Another positive for this is that let's say a student here, we'll use Johnny Thunder, did really well on the argumentation of this. He did really well on finding the author's purpose, but he really struggled with the conventions on this assessment. And so here, right, Johnny got a 1 on just this one part. And if we break it up into multiple assignments for one assessment where we have each standard separate, little Johnny here can now use the school's retake policy and just retake this one individual section of the assessment. Here we have the assessment where we have all three standards attached. And now we're just going to be able to give one score overall on that assessment. Now, one of the other changes is to how we can score each assignment. We're only going to be able to use the whole numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 while scoring the assessment. We also have access to a couple of new codes. One is NE, which stands for no evidence. And no evidence is going to calculate the same as a 0. So if you type in NE, from the overall grade calculation is going to work the same way as if you were able to type in to a 0. We also have the ability to type in EX, which is going to be inexcused, which will leave a null, so it won't calculate either positive or negative at all for that student. And you see a little E in the top right-hand corner signaling that that is an excused assignment. The student didn't need to do that assignment. That's creating a summative assessment. We're going to be doing pretty much the exact same thing when we create a formative assessment or an assessment in the feedback category. You're always going to start with the plus button in the bottom right-hand corner, the assignment button here, and the only big difference is you're going to be choosing the category in that category dropdown. Now, when we choose formative, we're still going to attach a standard the same way we did it in the overall, when we were creating a summative assessment. We're just going to choose a different category. When we choose feedback, we don't need to attach a standard to that category when we create those when we create those assignments there. We're just going to click on feedback, but we are always going to make it secondary standard score, and best practice is going to be to always make that worth 4 points. So we can go ahead and call this, maybe this is the peer review feedback on our argumentative essay. We'll go ahead and choose all the information that we have here. Now, because this is a feedback, we don't need to click on standards. I don't need advanced settings, and I can just go ahead and save this information here. Boom, there's my assignment right there. Now, when we go and we start scoring assignments, we're going to go ahead and click into the box just like we have before. And we're going to be able to use, like I said, 1, 2, 3, or 4, only whole numbers. You're not going to be able to input a 2.5 or a 2.2 or any other decimal point, along with the NE and the EX for excused. A couple other things that we'll be able to do is once you have entered in scores, you'll notice that again, that box in the top right-hand corner of our screen will indicate that we have unsaved changes. We're going to click on that red oval up there to save those changes. We also have access to some comment codes and information inside of the assessment, and I can access this by clicking on the name of the assessment. So here's an example where Johnny had a 2 for this standard inside of our definition essay. We'll use that as the example. And now what I can do is I can click on scores once I've created this, and now I have access to the scores inside of this assessment. I am now going to, let's pretend that Johnny has retaken this assignment in accordance with the school's retake policy, and he went from a 2 to a 4. So I can change that score to a 4. I'm going to use my comment code here and add the comment of redo, which is going to now show up there. And what I can do in the public note is I can actually type Johnny retook this standard on, we'll say he retook this today, and he moved from a 2 to a 4. And any of the public notes will show up in parent view and student view. So now a parent can go ahead and click on here, or a student, and see that the grade has been updated with redo with the new score of 4. And when I save this and I leave the assignment, we'll notice that now I have a new score of 4. I have an indicator saying that it was retaken or redo, and then I have a comment code here that I can hover over and see the comment code that I entered in there. The last thing to keep in mind is how the scores are calculated. Remember that we used a 90% summative, a 10% formative, and a 0% feedback. So because feedback is worth 0 points, you'll notice that when I change a score inside of the feedback score, there is no calculation change to the student's overall grade because that category is worth 0%. If I change something in formative is going to be worth 10% of the grade, and then summative is going to be worth 90% of the grade. If you are a teacher who wants to have a 100% summative gradebook, if you didn't use formative at all, the summative category would essentially calculate at 100%. So it won't discount that 10%, it'll fill in that 10% as summative. So again, if you wanted to have a 100% summative gradebook, if you did not use the formative category and only used summative and feedback, the gradebook would calculate correctly and show that summative was then worth 100%. This was a quick overview of all the changes that are coming to the standards aligned Elite 8 gradebook. For more information, make sure you check out all the other help documents or reach out to a building member, a pilot teacher, or your digital learning TOSA.